Story 1. Instead of lying there trying to sleep, I stay up doing things until I physically cannot stay awake any longer. Story 2. Lie on your back, close your eyes, relax your face, and then focus on each section of your body, relaxing it one by one. It works every time. I believe it may be a military technique. Story 3. I have developed the special skill of sleeping anywhere, so don't worry, I have your back. The trick to falling asleep quickly is to stop focusing on sleep. Instead, focus on getting as comfortable as possible and relaxing, regardless of whether sleep comes or not. Story 4. Eating around 600 to 700 calories of carbohydrates, while engaging in other activities and reading about various topics. Story 5. Take any four-letter word, and for every letter in the word, think of a word that starts with that letter. For example, if the word is taco, you could choose tomato, accurate, cold, and octopus. Change the theme every time you begin again to make it more challenging. This exercise helps shift your focus and is very beneficial. I don't know who originally shared this with me, but it has made a significant difference. Story 6. I can't really explain it, but I use basic meditation, focusing on my breath. When my focus fades, I just let it happen. I don't try to regain it. Story 7. The channel Nemo's Dreamscapes on YouTube is one of my favorites, featuring 6 to 8 hours of thunder sounds while oldies music plays quietly in the next room, or an ambience of a Polar Express train with oldies Christmas music playing in the next car. Story 8. I've started playing that word game that's been popular and I really enjoy it. Choose a word. Any word. Giraffe. Then think of a word that starts with each letter. I skipped the first letter because that's the first word. Giraffe. Initial. Radiation. And so on until the last letter, which then becomes your new word. For example, environment. Sometimes I make it more challenging by trying to keep all words in the same category. In the giraffe example, I would stick with animals until the last word, where I would create a new category. I'm usually asleep by the time I'm on category 3. Story 9, workout, minimal blue light, melatonin, and then I use an application called Sleep Sounds to play a combination of crickets and firecrackles. As a lifelong insomniac, this is the only method that works more than half the time. Story 10. I create stories in my mind as if I were writing a book. Sometimes they involve real people and sometimes they are fictional. It works every time and quickly shuts off my thoughts. Story 11. Calming educational videos on the computer are enjoyable. 3 Blue 1 Brown is excellent. Christopher White has many geology and paleontology videos. David Hone offers informative lectures. Draconiful has hours of videos about ships. It's nice to learn something while I drift off. Story 12. Get into bed and then give myself 5 to 10 minutes for the intrusive thoughts. Turn each one into a pebble or rock and put it in a box. Then lock the box and listen to rain sounds on my phone. Anxiety is real. Story 13. It's incredibly hard for me to get to sleep. It always has been. I read until I feel tired, then listen to sleep sounds, mainly rain. I only sleep in the bedroom. No television in there, no being on the phone. It is important that when I'm in the bedroom, my mind understands it's a place for sleep. Full darkness. I make sure to be physically tired from exercise or work. I have a couple of ways to distract or slow my mind. One example is picking a word. For instance, slap. I think of how many words start with S. So usually, I'll go 3 levels deep. Sa. No. Sab. Saboteur. Sac. Sacrilège. Sacrifice. Sad. Sadism. I try not to use variations such as sadistic. Sae. No. I continue with saz. Then, SCV. No. SC. SCA. Scar. Scary. When I reach SZ, I move on to the next letter. La. No. Lab. Labor. Laboratory. You get the idea. This method is better for distraction from anxiety, but it also helps tire my mind. With all these strategies combined, I manage to fall asleep within 10 minutes about 20% of the time. If I'm lucky, I fall asleep in an hour, which happens around 60% of the time. If I can't sleep, I get up and try again. Once the birds start chirping, I lie there and think about how much trouble I'm in now. Story 14. I do a guided meditation I found on an app. It's a 21-minute wind down from the day. At this point, I fall asleep before the meditation is over, usually in 10 minutes compared to 60 or 70 minutes before, and it makes a huge improvement in the quality of my sleep. Story 15. I am looking for ideas as I struggle with insomnia. Please note, I am female and will not be making a mess, but I appreciate that the female variant is appealing. Story 16. Falling asleep happens quickly, but it requires some effort initially. Stay awake for a couple of days. Story 17. I got a shock watch to make sure I don't oversleep. Over a week, it ensured I was so tired from such little sleep that I passed out earlier. Story 18. Letter games. My name is Amy. My husband is Adam. We live in Alabama and we both like apples. I seldom get past J or K. Story 19. I start with the letter A. I think of 3 things that begin with that letter and try to visualize them. Then, I proceed to the next letter and continue through the alphabet. Another activity I do is think of items that start with the letter A and keep listing them until I run out of ideas. Then I move on to the next letter. Story 20. Have children who wake up throughout the night and then wake up at 5 a.m. to exercise. Basically, getting minimal sleep each night helps me fall asleep faster. Story 21. Breathing experience. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, remain still for 4 seconds, and repeat. This practice is very helpful. Story 22. Discovered this channel, Good Night Sleep, on YouTube where the hosts tell bedtime stories from various themes such as Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Elder Scrolls, Red Dead Redemption, Zelda, The Witcher, Scottish lore, and King Arthur, all in a very relaxing ASMR voice. Story 23. Controlling my circadian rhythm worked best for me. My body is trained to go to sleep roughly 4 hours after I stop eating and about an hour after I turn off all my electronic devices. I had trouble sleeping for a long time until I realized I was confusing my body by not being consistent. Prefers a routine so it knows when bedtime is. Story 24. I use insomnia medication when I really need it. Benadryl helps if I just need to feel a bit sleepier. Taking a hot bath or shower before bed also helps. Recently, I have been watching a movie before bed. For some reason, it's easier to fall asleep after a movie ends, as if my brain thinks, well, that's it, time for bed. Story 25. Paced breathing. Story 26. I sleep in a very specific body position. I lie on my side in a fetal position with my arms crossed tightly. The top of my head and eyes are covered completely by a blanket, leaving only my mouth and nose exposed. Feels like being swaddled. I also play some background noise, such as howling and whistling winds along with rumbling thunder simultaneously. Story 27. Melatonin. 30 minutes later. Hello, multiverse. What is on today's episode of Extremely Vivid Dreams? Story 28. Scroll endlessly on Reddit. Try for a few minutes to fall asleep, then return to scrolling. It is not very effective. Story 29. I play a game of Sudoku on my phone, then other puzzle games. It usually takes me 5 minutes to fall asleep. Story 30. First, there are the basics that you have probably read about. Avoid screen time 30 to 45 minutes before bedtime. I practice intermittent fasting, so I stop eating around 4 p.m. This reduces the digestion time before bed. Empty your bladder as much as possible. The room should be dark and dedicated to sleep or other related activities. Consider using a blindfold or earplugs if necessary. Maintain a cool temperature. No screens, including television, computer, tablet, or phone in sleep mode. Sleep sounds help some people, but my bedroom is very quiet, so I don't use them. Learn the ideal sleeping position and always start in that position. For me, it is on my back with my arms positioned so that my hands are around my midsection. I learned that if I sleep on my side, my sinuses become congested, causing me to breathe through my mouth, which makes my mouth and throat dry. This often leads to disturbing dreams that wake me up. I keep some water and nasal spray next to the bed just in case. Once I'm comfortable, I close my eyes. First, I see nothing, only blackness. However, if I continue to observe, I begin to see something else. Areas of light start to appear, swirling and changing shape. The images emerge in varying shades of gray, with some areas being very bright or appearing as flecks or slivers of light. These are called phosphenes, which, translated from Latin, means light show. Phosphenes are created by random electrical stimulation of the brain's visual cortex, or your mind's eye. You are literally observing your own brain's activity. As long as you focus on this fog of phosphenes, you do so in a state of no thought. However, if you continue to observe, another part of your mind activates. One of the brain's main functions is to gather and analyze sensory data. Even with your eyes closed, the brain still receives input from the visual cortex. It tries to correlate what it perceives into something it can recognize, similar to how one might try to identify shapes in clouds. When this occurs, the brain generates a cascade of unnecessary thoughts. The vision of the phosphenes becomes blurry and fades, replaced by irrelevant thoughts. Thus, the key is to recognize when this happens and quickly redirect your attention back to the phosphenes, returning to a state of no thought. This may seem strange, but I find that the images that arise seem to emerge from the fog. I can refocus my closed eyes on the area behind where the images appear. Feels unusual, but it works for me. This takes practice. If you are in an unfamiliar darkened room, it might take some time to find the light switch. However, the more often you turn the light on, the quicker and easier it will be to locate the switch. Learn to recognize the shift from no thought to thought. Don't judge yourself for not being able to maintain a mindful state for long. The more you find the switch, the more it will become second nature. Additionally, your ability to stay in that state will increase naturally. Be aware not only of the light of the phosphenes but also of the darkness, the nothingness from which the light arises and recedes. There can be no light without darkness, and no darkness without light. Finally, if you have a smartwatch, use it to track and learn more about your sleep. I hope this helps. Sweet dreams. Story 31. I put on socks and a hat to keep my feet and ears warm. Occasionally, I listen to a podcast in complete darkness with no light source at all. Story 32. ASMR slime videos or ephemeral riffs ASMR videos. That guy has some strange techniques going on because his sleep videos work very well. Story 33. There is a podcast called Sleep With Me that I have used for years. The host tells random stories and goes off on various tangents, similar to how your mind works when you are falling asleep. He describes his style as speaking in lulling, sleepy, dulcet tones, and frequently uses filler words like and air that help make the stories feel disconnected while you are drifting off. Give it a try. Story 34. Count backwards by sevens from 700 or 7,000 if 700 doesn't take long enough. It is the perfect amount of engagement to forget about everything else but also boring enough to fall asleep to. Story 35. Start a documentary near my head, which is somewhat boring, so I focus on it for a few minutes and eventually drift off to sleep. Story 36. Systematically imagine relaxing and turning off each part of your body from the toes upward. I can fall asleep in about 30 seconds if I choose to. Story 37. Seriously, I imagine myself doing something. Maybe surviving in the wilderness during a snowstorm, building a hut and a fire, being skilled in a sport or playing a musical instrument and becoming a superstar. I usually fall asleep by the time I start figuring out how to do it. Story 38. I just found videos meant for mushroom trips on YouTube. You can zone out on the visuals with the binaural beats or deep sleep sounds. It is the only thing that works. Story 39. Randomized thoughts. It works amazingly. You just imagine random things like birds, computers, snow, and oranges. The more random, the better. I usually fall asleep in 5 minutes, despite being nervous and not sleepy at all. Story 40. Put on a boring movie. I could never watch more than 30 minutes without inevitably falling asleep. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.